Hello, fellow horror fiends, and welcome to The Horror Within Me, a podcast dedicated to the world of horror. Join us each week as our host explores a new, horrifying topic from the many realms of horror, such as film, television, and more, and returns to tell us his terrifying revelations. So sit back, relax, and get ready to face the horrors within.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of The Horror Within Me. I'm your host, Eric, and it is time for another Spooky Sunday episode together. Real quick, just want to touch base on last week's anniversary episode. I'm so excited that we got to have 3 guests for the first time, and that it was the 1-year anniversary episode of the podcast. It really means so much to me that you guys come and listen or watch every week or every few weeks or whatever the case is. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for the support. We are in 2023, everybody, and it is going to be an amazing year for horror. One of my personal goals for the show is to do a little bit more updated, modern content. So newer content that's been released and not only old movies and old TV shows, which I will still do a lot of because I want to touch base on a lot of the things that I grew up loving and want to talk about. But I also really want to jump out there and join the conversations of the new fresh horror that's going on as well. But this week, it is an older movie, but it's a horror movie classic. And the reason I chose it was because when I was thinking of the month of January and a new year and what I really wanted to have for the show, this movie popped in my mind. And so this week's episode, we're going to do the 1980 film The Shining, starring Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. I chose The Shining, 1, because I really, really enjoyed the movie, and 2, I really, really enjoyed the book, and 3, because of the tone and atmosphere of the whole thing. So those are the reasons that I picked it. Now, I want to make myself very clear that this is going to be based on the 1980 film directed by Stanley Kubrick and not on Stephen King's novel. And if you're a fan of The Shining and you've read the novel and you watched the movie, you already know that they're vastly different, right? So I want to make it known that this episode is about the movie and not even the miniseries. I believe there's a miniseries with, I can't even remember the actors in it. I don't think I've ever seen it, but this is going to be about the movie anyway. It's a mouthful to say, isn't it? So we're going to jump in. We're going to do what we always do. It's what we love, right? We're going to do the synopsis. We're going to do ratings. We're going to do some cast. We're going to have a terrifying trivia question and some fun facts that I found about the movie. And then a little bit of talking about what I remember and what I love most about the movie. And then we'll do the rating system. And that'll be this week's episode. So stick around. It's going to be a fun time. We're back. We're ready. So exciting. I'm very excited about this movie. So let's jump right in before we get ahead of ourselves. All right. So the synopsis for The Shining that I found on IMDb is as follows. Let me clear my throat. A family heads to an isolated hotel for the winter where a sinister presence influences the father into violence, while his psychic son sees horrific forebodings from both past and future. The rating on IMDb is an 8.4 out of 10 and an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's really good ratings. It's, again, I said this earlier, it was directed by Stanley Kubrick, based on the Stephen King novel of the same name. It has a runtime of 2 hours and 26 minutes, and its cast stars as this: Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance, Shelley Duvall as Wendy Torrance, Danny Lloyd as Danny Torrance, and Scatman Crothers as Dick Halloran. So those are the main cast members that we have. It's not a huge amount of people in the movie because it's based on the family that we've read. or in the synopsis, there's a father, a mother, and a son in a hotel. So the reason that they go to the hotel is because Jack Torrance takes a job as the caretaker for the off season when nobody's going to be living there. They have access to the entire hotel. So that's why there's the main is a cast is just those three. So let's do a terrifying trivia question related to the movie before we dive really into it so that we have time to really discuss before we answer. So this week's terrifying trivia question is: it's a true or false. True or false? Stephen King has stated that this is his favorite adaptation of his work. Stick around to the end of this episode to find out the answer. Now, some of you might know the answer, some of you might not know the answer. I'm curious. So if you know the answer, do what I always say. Head on over to the Facebook page, follow the podcast group, and let me know if you knew this week's terrifying trivia question. So a couple things stick out to me when I think of the movie The Shining. And one of the things that the image that pops in my head first is this hotel, right? And the snow everywhere and the sheer magnitude of this place. Like, it's just so enormous and empty that it's, its presence alone is sinister. And I think that captured beautifully on film. I think it's just a beautiful capture and it just sets the tone. And then I think of the carpet. And it's such a unique carpet and it's a staple in this community. I don't know what it is about this fucking carpet, but I want it. I've been shopping for the Shining carpet, trying to find one to put in this space, because right now I just have like this generic carpet I got from Ollie's that nothing against it. It just, this used to be a communal office for me and my husband when we bought our home, but now it's turned into just my creative space where I do my Twitch gaming, where I record the podcast. So there's gaming things, there's horror collectibles, there's things everywhere. And I've really been updating it to reflect that space. And the one thing that's kind of still not changed is the carpet, which is very office decor. And I'm looking, I would love the office to have the Shining carpet. So if you have or know where to get it, because I looked on Amazon at some of the vendors and the reviews weren't great. It was padded. It was weird. Not, when people got it in the mail, they weren't very excited about it. So send me a message if you know where I can find a decently priced carpet, 5x7, and send it to me in a DM. I am very interested. Anyway, the movie is, again, we're going back. So we know that the father, Jack, used to be an alcoholic. Danny was hurt by him during an alcoholic rage. He grabbed him or something happened. We don't really know. It's not really touched upon too much, but Wendy is timid, but also very mother bear when she needs to be. Brilliant performances by all of the actors in this film. I really, it's almost 43 years old. So definitely not something that if you're in a younger generation may have seen, unless the people in your life that are older have introduced you to it. So it is a dated piece in terms of certain aspects, but it's a classic horror movie that you have to see. So you have to check out The Shining. It's just, Jack Nicholson is brilliant in almost everything he's ever done, and this is no exception. The little boy Danny has what is called this. He calls The Shining. Him and Dick Halloran, who also has The Shining, learn to communicate. And Danny calls it his friend Tony, and he does like this weird voice with his fingers, like, Danny's not here right now. And I just thought that was so funny. So he can see the evilness of the hotel and what's going on, and is terrified because nobody else can see this. And the ghosts are slowly, manipulating and getting under the skin of the father and driving him mad with these different images and different things that are going on with the wife and the son, on top of being in this hotel completely isolated from the rest of the world. Like, there's a snowstorm, so there's no getting away, there's no going into town. You are literally stuck, packed with food for a few months. And he's a writer, he's trying to write, and you have all these factors, right, that are playing into the descent of madness. And I think it's so well done to watch his descent into madness. And I think we're just going to touch a little bit. We could have learned a little bit. Game of Thrones could have learned a little bit on the descent of madness from The Shining, because they didn't do it right. But The Shining did it perfectly. You feel yourself knowing that this is leading up to just a climactic, catastrophic kind of end, right? Like, the mom is worried about her son, who's being strange and doing weird things, and her husband slowly becoming more and more distant and different, and he's drinking again. And so she has no one in this hotel to turn to, and all hell's breaking loose, literally. It's just, thinking about it, a couple things I wrote down. What I wrote more about the movie was, obviously it's very different from the book. And when I think about it, the feelings I wrote down were, gives a feeling of hopelessness, claustrophobia, and dread. And you may be thinking, how the hell, you just said, Eric, that the hotel is so fucking huge. How do you feel claustrophobic? I think I feel claustrophobic from the movie because you are cut off from the world. Maybe it's isolated, it's a better word, and not a small space. But I feel like when you think of the entire, place, it can be considered a very small space that you're sucking with with these people. So, and dread is just that, you, like I said, you're watching, you're seeing these horrific images, these weird images, and you just know that it's not going to end well for this family. That there's no way that all three of them are walking out of here the way that they walked in. So you just have this underlying sense of, God, what is going to happen? And you're just waiting for it, on top of these hotel guests from the past, right? These ghosts that are sinister and evil, and one that is specific and very very well known within this universe, is the woman in the bathtub in room 237. Let me take a moment before. All right, I'm going to set the scene. If you've never seen The Shining, even if you have seen The Shining, I'm going to bring you back to this time. Ready? There's a scene where Danny sees this crazy woman laughing at him from the bathtub in room 237. They say never to go into this room, right? But when Jack goes to the room, now he opens the door, and the atmosphere is so fucking scary. Like, it's got like this calm, weird noise, like music, not music, happening. And there's a woman straight into the bathtub, beautiful woman with straight hair, just staring back at the father. It's very sexual, it's very seductive, and he is clearly interested in this woman. So he's going to her, and she's getting out of the tub, and she's completely naked, and you're like, what is happening? Like, and you're like, his wife is here. Who's this woman? What's going on? Like, as an audience viewer, you know that this is not right, but also, like, don't want the father, like the father, you're fucking so easily tricked to just be seduced by this woman. But this was the 70s, 80s, whatever. Um, Gets up to her, I believe, if memory serves correct, that they started to kiss, and then he opens his eyes, and in the mirror reflection, you can see she's like a decayed older person, and then he pulls away out of fright and fear, and she's that old hag looking woman screaming, and the laughing that she does is absolutely like bone chilling. Like your blood runs cold when you see this woman and she's laughing after this scene. And he runs away as she's like walking towards him with her hands out. And I was a child when I first seen this movie. She terrified me so bad. Like one of the top scariest things I've ever fucking seen in film when I was a kid, I think. And it sticks with me to this day. Like I think about it constantly when I'm out. Woman is terrifying. Just, oh my God. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. This, it was just, oh, another scene that I didn't understand as a child that I understood more as an adult was a scene where I think it was Wendy towards the end. I remind you guys that I haven't seen the movie in a couple years. I own it on Blu-ray. I just bought it recently from Walmart, and came with a small little Jack Torrance pop figure. But I haven't watched it since I watched it with my husband, so I'm trying to play off memory. But I've seen it many times. But there's a scene where they open the door to one of the rooms. I don't know who it was, and there is a man in like a dog mask, looking like they were getting head, sucking dick. I don't know what it was. I apologize for the vulgarity, but I didn't understand it. But like looking at it as an adult, you're like, this is some twisted shit. Like, what is happening? It's all very deviant sexual behavior happening. It's, alcohol and parties and sex and all of this stuff that's happening. And not only is they're appealing to Jack in different ways, but they're terrifying little Danny because he can see and know that something's coming. And so as the Grady guy, who was the old caretaker, is explaining that, he's given Jack drinks, that he needs to discipline his wife and son by killing them, right? And eventually, he goes mad, Jack goes mad, and decides to start this. And so the entire climactic end of The Shining is beautiful and it's scary. And the infamous bathroom scene, another bathroom scene, is when Wendy is hiding from Jack, who's got an axe, right? Busting through the door. And it's been used so much in pop culture. It's been such a pop culture part of everything. It's like, he's chopping the door down and then he has enough where his head comes through and he's like, here's Johnny, right? That's from The Shining. If you did not know, and there's no way you haven't seen the reference in many different things. Iconic. Just brilliantly done. So what fun facts did we find from The Shining in my research? Let's go to the notes. It's time for Frightfully Fun Facts with your boy Eric. I don't know, I just made that up. Don't laugh at me. I make weird jokes all the time. So, first fun fact. So most of the filming took place on sets, but the exterior of the hotel was a mountain lodge named the Timberline Lodge, and it is located on the south side of Mount Hood in Clackamas County, Oregon. So if you're ever wondering about The Shining and you want to visit this location, it's a real location, and it's on Mount Hood in Clackamas County, and it's called the Timberline Lodge in Oregon. Fun destination for you horror buffs. Second fun fact that I found was the bat that Wendy uses to hit Jack during the staircase scene is made of rubber, and when she hits him with it, you can see it bend. I never, ever noticed this before. Now I need to go back and watch, and I'm going to intently watch to see if the bat bends, because I wonder if they fixed it or how they did it, but clearly they didn't. Which another iconic scene was that scene for me with Jack coming up the stairs and he's like, Give me the bat. Yeah. And he's like laughing and he's coming up the stairs and she's frantic and hysteric and she's swinging a bat left and right. And she's like, leave us alone. Stay back. Like so weak, but strong at the same time. Cracks him and he goes flying down the steps. I need to see the bat bend though. I need to see the bat bend, but I love that fucking scene. Love that scene. That's, I think, the beginning of the attack, and she ends up dragging him and locking him in the freezer. Anyway, last fun fact I found was that the production crew built a door for Jack Nicholson to easily break down, so make it that it broke down very easily, right? But they didn't know that Jack Nicholson was a volunteer fire marshal, so the original door that they used, he busted down way too fast, forcing them to like build a stronger door. So that's kind of funny, and that's a kind of a fun fact, and that's the conclusion of the fun facts that I found for the 1980 film of The Shining. So, fun facts that are out of the way, we're going to move on, and we're going to answer, it's time to answer the terrifying trivia question, because we have to answer the question in order to continue this episode. So, let's go back. This week's terrifying trivia question is, true or false? Stephen King has stated that this is his favorite adaptation of work. The answer is false. In fact, Stephen King has very publicly voiced his negative feelings towards the film, stating, quote, the movie has no heart, there's no center to the picture, end quote. You like that beginning quote, end quote kind of thing? I love saying it. I feel all professional. Yes, he did not like this film. He did not feel that his work was represented the way that the book was, that they left out a lot of the big things. And as someone who read the book a couple years ago during COVID, I ordered both the Pet Sematary and the Shining book because, as you know, if you listen to my platform, I am a Stephen King fan, and I wanted to go back and start reading some of his older work. And I started with The Shining and the Pet Sematary. What is the problem with the talking today? Anyway. The book is very, very different than the movie. That's not to say that the movie was bad, but after reading the book, I wondered why they didn't do some things that they did in the book. But again, this is, about the movie, so I'm not going to get too deep into that. That's all I'm going to say. We're going to discuss the book, another time maybe. We'll save that for some content on another episode. So, where can you watch The Shining? You're listening to this podcast. Everything I'm saying to you is super fucking intriguing, and I've got your attention, and I've sold you on watching The Shining because you've never seen it, or I sold you on wanting to watch it again and you don't want to go buy it. Where can you watch it? I figured out that it is streaming free on Tubi. Yes, there are trailers. Ugh. Yes, there are commercials, but it's free. But I'm sure you could find it. So I think it's also on Amazon or YouTube for $3.99. So if you want to spend less than $5 to watch a 2.5-hour movie, you can also do that without any ads. So that is where you can watch The Shining. So what is my rating, right? What do you think that I'm going to give this movie? What special item within the universe of The Shining can we use to rate the movie? I thought it's just very easy. It's an easy pick. Hotel keys, right? Like the key with the, the old hotel keys that had like a keychain with the room number on it. We're going to do that. We'll use room 237 keys. And I'm going to give it a rating of a 9 out of 10 hotel keys. It is so good. It really gives you that feeling. It's a great movie to watch in the winter, especially January, February, when you are done with the holidays and the weather seems so far away to be nice again, and you feel like you're stuck inside and you're getting a little, uneasy and, that isolated feeling. This is the movie to watch in this time. It really puts you in the feeling of it all. The snow, the descent, everything about it is beautiful, and it's terrifying, and it's streaming for free, so watch it anyway. And that is it for this week's episode of The Horror Within Me. Again, I am your host, Eric. You can find me on social media at Facebook at The Horror Within Me. Join the podcast group at The Horror Within Me podcast on Facebook. We are on Instagram at Horror Within Me, TikTok at Horror Within Me Pod, and this podcast is also streaming on YouTube at The Horror Within Me. And if you're listening, go on to whatever you're listening to, give it a rating, give it a review. Let me know what you like, what you didn't like. Let me know what movies or TV shows or content you would like me to cover or not cover. And let's really just keep building on this next second year of the Horror Within Me and connecting with people. Thank you to everyone who has been there, who has continually been there. It means so much to me for those of you who have already been so supportive, and I look forward to meeting so many more of you. And next week's episode, everyone, I'm going to have a guest who is going to be a horror writer, and so make sure you stay tuned for that. And that's it. As always, everyone, stay safe. More importantly, stay spooky.